Welcome to the deep dive. So late 2022, it really felt like a shockwave, didn't it? ChatGPT goes public.
Oh, absolutely.
And suddenly this incredibly powerful tech is just out there, free.
Yeah.
And it became the fastest growing app in history. Just boom.
Unprecedented speed.
And the first reaction, especially in education, pure panic. Cheating, plagiarism, is assessment just dead, that kind of thing.
Understandable panic, really, but then pretty quickly some institutions started thinking differently.
Right. They realized panic isn't a strategy. You have to support ethical use, transparency, because, well, the genie's out. You can't ignore it.
And that urgency, that immediate need to figure things out is exactly why our source today is so vital. We're diving deep into UNESCO's first global guidance on generative AI in education, published in 2023.
A foundational text.
Definitely. And remember, UNESCO leads the Education 2030 agenda. Their whole focus is SDG for inclusive, equitable, quality education. So they're looking at this from a truly global perspective. Equity is key.
Okay, so our mission today, it's pretty clear. We're treating this deep dive almost like an instructional guide. We're going to walk you, the learner, right through this document, section by section. We want to give you a really solid grasp of the ethics, the regulations needed, the impact on teaching, the whole picture.
And the goal, UNESCO's goal and ours today, is to help plan for the right rules, the right policies, build up human capacity. Basically, make sure this technology serves a human-centered vision.
Which is needed, like
Yeah.
yesterday, because the tech is moving so much faster than the policy.
That's the critical point. Get this statistic from the source. ChatGPT hits 100 million monthly active users in January 2023. Okay,
Huge number.
huge. But by July 2023, only one country had actually released specific Gen AI regulations.
Wow.
One, that massive gap, lightning-fast adoption versus snail-paced governance, that's the tension this whole document is trying to address. And that's where we'll start. ##AI. What is generative AI and how does it work?
Section 1. All right, let's start right at the beginning then. We can't really talk about rules until we understand what this thing actually is. Section 1 of the guidance focuses on defining Gen AI and breaking down how it works. #A. Defining Gen AI and its limitations. 1.1.
Okay, so the definition first. Generative AI. It's AI that automatically makes new content.
New is the key word there.
Exactly. We're talking text, images, video, music, even software code. It creates this stuff based on prompts you give it in, normal language.
So it's not just finding existing stuff like Google does.
No, that's the crucial difference. It's not just curating web pages. It's synthesizing, creating outputs that didn't exist before based on all the data it was trained on.
And how does it do that? The mechanism seems, well, almost simple when you describe it, just statistical patterns.
Fundamentally, yes. It digests enormous amounts of data, web pages, social media, books, you name it, and it analyzes patterns, like which word usually comes after another word.
Okay.
And then it identifies the most common patterns and just repeats them. It predicts the next likely piece based on statistics.
That sounds almost underwhelming. But it leads to these massive limitations, doesn't it? That's the key takeaway here.
It is absolutely the key, because even though the output can sound incredibly fluent, very human-like sometimes.
Yeah, convincing.
Very convincing. The document flags two critical caveats, things you, the learner, really need to grasp. First, Gen AI cannot create genuinely new ideas.
Right. No real-world solutions.
Because it doesn't understand the real world, it has no concept of objects or social dynamics or science. It's just remixing patterns it's already seen.
And the second caveat, reliability.
Exactly. The output is not reliable or accurate. Even the companies that make it admit this. We hear the term hallucinations a lot.
Which sounds almost whimsical, but it's not.
Not at all. For you, the learner, think of them as confidently stated falsehoods, plausible-sounding misinformation, and if you don't already know the topic well,
You'd probably just accept it.
precisely. And that potential to mislead, almost invisibly, is what makes it so risky in education.
Okay, so if it's just patterns, how does it create that convincing facade? Let's look under the hood a bit, the technical stuff.
Right, the foundation is machine learning, ML specifically, a type called artificial neural networks, or ANNs.
Inspired sort of loosely by how our brains are wired with neurons and connections.
Loosely, yes. And within ANNs, for text generation like ChatGPT, there's a hierarchy. You start with general-purpose transformers.
Which lead to large language models, LLMs.
Correct. And then the ones most people know are the generative pre-trained transformers, the GPTs.
And this is where the scale just explodes, right? The guidance gives some numbers on GPT evolution.
Yeah, and it's worth pausing on these because the growth is exponential, really tells the story. GPT-1, back in 2018, trained on 40 gigabytes of data, 117 million parameters.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot, but wait.
Exactly. Just 2 years later, GPT-3 jumps to, wait for it, 17,000 gigabytes of data and 175,000 million parameters.
1,000 million, so 175 billion.
Right. A massive leap.
And GPT-4 in 2023. The numbers aren't confirmed. It's proprietary.
Still secret, yeah. But the reports are astronomical. Maybe 1,000 gigabytes of data and potentially 170 million parameters.
170 trillion parameters. It's hard to even comprehend that scale.
It is. And look at the speed comparison the guidance makes. The computing power needed to train these things has been doubling every 3-4 months.
Months, not years like Moore's Law.
Nope. Moore's Law is about doubling every 2 years. This is way, way faster.
And that speed, it just keeps coming back as the central challenge.
It is the challenge. How do you regulate something moving that fast? How do you even audit it? That huge number, 170 million parameters, that's why we have the black box problem we need to talk about later. You just can't see inside.
Okay, so given that immense scale, that raw power, how does it actually turn my prompt into, say, an email or an essay? The document breaks it down.
Yeah, it's a process. First, your prompt, the sentence you type in gets broken into smaller pieces called tokens, words or parts of words. Second, the GPT uses all those statistical patterns it learned from its training data. It calculates the probability of which token should come next. And it starts with a kind of random prediction.
Random, really.
Well, probabilistic. It picks a likely starting point based on the prompt and its data, then predicts the next token, then the next, building the response piece by piece.
Until it decides it's finished.
Right. Then, importantly, it runs the text through, filters the guardrails, trying to catch offensive or harmful content.
Trying being the operative word there sometimes.
Often, yes. And finally, there's post-processing, cleaning it up, adding formatting, maybe sticking on those chatty openers like, sure, or certainly, to make it seem more human.
And it's not just text, image generation. Those DANs you mentioned. Generative adversarial networks. That sounds complex.
It's a clever setup, really. Think of it as a competition. You have two parts. The generator takes your prompt and makes a random image. Then the discriminator acts like an art critic. It looks at the generated image and compares it to real images it knows, trying to tell if it's fake or real.
So one makes fakes, the other tries to spot them.
Exactly. And the generator learns from the discriminator's feedback. It keeps tweaking its image, trying to fool the discriminator better next time. This back and forth process makes the images incredibly realistic over time.
Which leads to those deepfakes.
Precisely. There are other methods too, like diffusion models used by tools like DALE or Stable Diffusion, but they all achieve these hyper-realistic, sometimes unsettlingly real outputs. ####C. Prompt engineering and EdGPT 1.3 and 1.4.
Okay, so we know how the machine works, roughly.
Right.
But getting what you want out of it, that's another story. The guidance points out it's actually hard to get good results consistently.
Oh, definitely. It mentions that anecdote about the AI image that won an art prize, Theatre d'Opera Spatial. The artist spent weeks fine-tuning the prompt to get that specific result.
Weeks. So it's not just typing a sentence and getting magic back.
Yeah. Not if you want something precise or high quality. This whole process has led to a new skill, prompt engineering.
Right, designing the input.
Exactly. It's about using specific techniques, like laying out your reasoning clearly in the prompt, using simple language, giving context or example.
When tweaking it over and over.
Iterative refinement, yeah. It's a skill.
And the implication for education seems huge there. If it takes an expert weeks to get it right, what about a young student?
That's the worry. Younger learners who aren't experts in the subject or in prompt engineering might just accept the first thing the AI spits out, even if it's superficial or just plain wrong.
Because it looks plausible.
Right. They might not have the knowledge or the patience to refine the prompt or critically check the output. It risks rewarding a kind of superficial engagement.
This makes me think about specialization. If the main models like GPT are trained on everything, are there more focused versions for education?
Yes, that's the idea behind EdGPT. You take a massive foundation model like GPT-3 or 4, and then you fine-tune it. You train it further using a smaller, high-quality data set specifically about education.
So data like textbooks, pedagogical research, maybe good lesson plans.
Exactly. The goal is to make a model that's better aligned with teaching methods, maybe less biased, more relevant to specific learning tasks. The source mentions examples like EduChat or MathGPT.
That sounds promising, like potentially safer and more useful for schools.
Potentially. But, and this is a big but, the guidance stresses even these specialized EdGPTs still make mistakes.
The underlying engine is the same.
Right. The core limitations persist. So even if a tool is labeled EdGPT or educational AI, users, teachers, students absolutely must keep that critical perspective. Don't just assume it's correct or pedagogically sound because of the label. Always verify. #2. Controversies and implications for education, Section 2.
Okay, so we've got the mechanics down, the incredible speed, the scale, the pattern matching, the limitations. Now let's get into the really thorny stuff, the controversies. Section 2 of the guidance walks us through the big ethical and systemic risks Gen AI brings to education. #A, global equity and regulatory gaps, 2.1 and 2.2.
And the first major issue it tackles is global equity, or rather, inequity. Building and controlling these huge Gen AI models takes immense resources.
Massive computing power, tons of data, specialized expertise.
Exactly, which means it's concentrated in just a few places, mainly the US, China, parts of Europe, the big tech economies.
And this creates what the document calls data poverty elsewhere.
Yes, particularly in the global south. They don't have the resources to build their own large models, and the data used to train the dominant models mostly comes from the global north.
So the tools themselves reflect northern culture and values.
Overwhelmingly, it risks a kind of digital or cultural colonization. The algorithms might be completely inappropriate or biased when used in different cultural contexts. If your language, your culture, your local knowledge isn't in the training data,
You're invisible to the AI, or worse, misrepresented.
right, you get marginalized by the very tools meant to be universal.
And this is made worse by that regulatory lag we talked about.
Compounded massively. The tech moves in months, but laws take years to adapt. Plus, the companies often keep the core tech secret, proprietary IPs.
So governments are struggling to catch up, to assert control and make sure Gen AI is treated as a public good.
Exactly. The guidance is clear. We need legislation so governments can step in, ensure fairness, protect cultural diversity, and prevent this technology from just entrenching existing global inequalities.
So for you, the learner, or even educators using these tools, it means being super critical about the output's perspective. Is it really neutral or just reflecting a specific dominant worldview?
Always ask that question. #B, content, ownership, and opacity, 2.3 and 2.4.
Okay, next controversy, content and who owns it. This feels like a legal minefield.
It is. These models are trained on unbelievable amounts of data scraped from the internet, often without asking the creators for permission.
So potentially billions of copyright violations baked into the system.
That's what many of the current lawsuits are about, yes. It raises huge questions about intellectual property.
And there's the issue of removing data too, right? Like the right to be forgotten under GDPR in Europe. Can they even do that once it's trained in?
It seems technically extremely difficult, maybe impossible, to surgically remove specific data points from these massive interconnected models. So yeah, it potentially conflicts with existing privacy rights. As a user, you need to realize anything you put online could be hoovered up and used to train these systems, possibly without your knowledge or consent.
Which leads us to trust, or lack of it, especially with the black box problem.
Yes, the opacity issue. We know ANNs work, but we can't really see how they reach a specific conclusion.
Wow.
Because the knowledge isn't stored in rules we can read, it's distributed across, remember, potentially trillions of numerical weights or parameters. We can see the input, we can see the output, but the reasoning process in between is opaque, a black box.
And in education, that's a disaster for trust, isn't it? If an AI grades your essay and you ask why you got that grade,
It literally can't tell you in a meaningful way. It can't explain its reasoning because it doesn't reason like a human. It just followed complex statistical pathways based on its weights.
which completely undermines assessment fairness.
Yeah,
How can you trust a grade you can't understand?
you can't. And this opacity makes it incredibly hard to find and fix biases baked into the model from the training data. If you don't understand how it works, how can you trust it? How can you adopt it responsibly in schools? It creates a fundamental barrier. ###C. Misinformation and cognitive risks, 2.5, 2.6, 2.7, 2.8.
Okay, let's talk about the quality of the stuff Gen AI actually produces.
Yeah,
The guidance warns about misinformation, even with those guardrails,
right. Biased, inaccurate, sometimes offensive material still gets through. And this is especially risky for younger learners.
because they might not have the background knowledge to spot the errors.
Exactly. They might lack the critical thinking skills or the domain expertise to question a plausible sounding but incorrect output.
And then there's this idea of recursive risk. That sounds ominous.
It is. Think about it. Future AI models will be trained on internet data. But increasingly, that internet data will include content generated by current AI models.
So AI learning from potentially flawed AI output.
Precisely. It's a potential feedback loop of degrading quality. Garbage in, garbage out, potentially getting worse over time. The internet's knowledge pool could become polluted by AI-generated errors and biases.
Wow, okay. The source also calls Gen AI a stochastic parrot. What's that about?
It's a metaphor highlighting that Gen AI just strings words together based on statistical probability what sounds likely to come next without any real understanding of meaning, context, or truth.
Like a parrot mimicking phrases without knowing what they mean.
Exactly. It's not based on real-world observation, evidence, or human values. That's why it hallucinates, makes up facts. It's just generating plausible sequences, not verifying truth.
So we shouldn't get distracted by hype about artificial general intelligence, AGI.
The guidance warns against it.
Right.
That distracts from dealing with the very real harms these current non-understanding systems are causing now. It might look intelligent, but it lacks common sense and critical thinking. Learners need to be constantly reminded. Treat the output as a rough draft, never as verified fact.
Beyond just being wrong, there's a risk of it making everything the same, reducing diversity.
Yes, because it learns common patterns, it tends to generate common dominant answers or styles. It smooths out the edges, reinforces the mainstream.
Which means minority viewpoints get lost.
They're often underrepresented in the training data to begin with because maybe they have less online presence. So the AI rarely reflects their perspectives, potentially marginalizing them even further. Users need to see the output as just one view, likely the most statistically common one, not the only or best one.
And finally, the deepfakes issue gets deeper.
Much dipper. GNs make altering images, video, audio incredibly easy and realistic now. This fuels disinformation, hate speech, fraud, all sorts of unethical and criminal acts.
So any image or video you see online could potentially be fake.
Increasingly, yes. Or your own image could be manipulated without your consent. It creates a massive erosion of trust in what we see and hear online, a really significant societal problem. #tag3. Regulating the use of Gen AI in education, Section 3.
Okay, we've laid out the risks. They're significant. Equity, trust, misinformation, deepfakes. It's a lot. So inevitably, we have to talk about regulation. Section 3 of the guidance maps out the path forward for governments and institutions. What needs to happen? #tag EA. Foundational regulatory steps 3.1 and 3.2.
The absolute starting point, the anchor for everything, has to be a human-centered approach.
Based on that UNESCO recommendation on AI ethics from 2021.
Exactly. The core principle is AI should augment human abilities, not replace or diminish them. It must be guided by human rights, human dignity, cultural diversity, and critically, there needs to be transparency and accountability all the way through.
So, philosophy into action. The document lists 7 specific steps for governments. We probably can't cover all 7 in detail, but maybe highlight the trickiest ones, like number 4, adjusting copyright laws.
Oh, that's a huge one right now. Governments urgently need to figure out 2 things. First, the legality of using copyrighted material to train these models.
Which is being fought in courts everywhere.
Everywhere. And second, what's the legal status of the stuff the AI creates? Who owns the copyright on an AI-generated essay or image? The user, the AI company, the original creators whose data was used. It's completely unclear.
And that uncertainty paralyzes things like academic publishing and research, right?
Absolutely. Clarity is essential.
What's another really critical step? Maybe number 5, Gen AI-specific regulations.
Yes. Because this technology is so different, you can't just rely on old laws designed for, say, software or the internet. You need rules that specifically address its generative power, its speed, its potential for bias and misinformation.
And the guidance mentioned China was the only one with specific rules back in mid-2023, requiring labeling of AI content.
That's what it cited, yes. The point is, most countries are way behind on creating tailored regulations. They also need, as step 2 suggests, whole-of-government AI strategies, because Gen AI impacts everything: jobs, security, healthcare, not just education. It needs coordinated action.
And step 6 seems vital too. Building capacity. You can have laws, but if teachers and schools aren't trained,
Then the laws are useless on the ground. Governments need to invest in training programs, develop resources. Singapore's dedicated platform was mentioned as an example. Regulation needs implementation support.
it really sounds like governments are playing catch-up on multiple fronts. Simultaneously privacy, ethics, copyright, specific Gen AI rules, all while the tech keeps accelerating.
It's a massive challenge. Hashtag BA, key regulatory elements for stakeholders. 3.3.
Okay, so the guidance doesn't just put it all on governments. It breaks down responsibilities for different players, right?
Yes, very helpfully. It outlines what's needed from governments, from the AI providers, from institutions like schools and universities, and even from individual users.
Let's start with governments again. Beyond those 7 steps, what's their core mandate here?
Key things include coordinating across sectors, protecting national data sovereignty, which links back to the equity issue, and finding that tricky balance between regulating risks and still promoting innovation, maybe through supporting open source alternatives.
And the age limit issue falls to governments too. That seems really sensitive.
Extremely sensitive. Most general purpose Gen AI tools, like ChatGPT, weren't designed for kids. There are risks of exposure to harmful content manipulation.
So what's the right age? The guidance mentions 13 based on U.S. law.
It mentions 13, which comes from the U.S. COPPA law and is often in the terms of service, usually requiring parental permission below 18. But then you have the EU's GDPR, setting 16 for independent use of social media. There's no global consensus.
So what does UNESCO recommend?
It says governments need to seriously deliberate and publicly justify whatever age threshold they set for independent use. And crucially, they must mandate how age is verified effectively and ensure parents have tools for monitoring. Just putting an age in the terms of service isn't enough.
Okay, now what about the providers, the companies actually building these AI models? They have a long list of responsibilities.
10 required accountabilities in the guidance. Let's pick a couple of key ones. First, data integrity. They need to ensure they're using trustworthy data from legal sources, obtain informed consent where needed, and actively work to prevent discriminatory or biased content. Easier said than done.
And the second big one is transparency, right? Even with the black box.
Yes, they have to provide explanations to regulators about their data sources, scale, type, the algorithms they use, how their models work as much as possible. And critically, they must label AI-generated content clearly as machine-produced. No passing off synthetic text as human.
Makes sense. What about institutional users, schools, universities? They're like the gatekeepers.
Their job is implementation and oversight. They need auditing mechanisms to check the algorithms, data, and outputs of any AI tools they use. They have to validate proportionality, meaning they must ensure the AI tool is ethically appropriate and pedagogically sound for the specific students and the learning task. Is it suitable for their age? Does it align with learning goals? Does it replace an activity essential for cognitive development? If it does, it's not proportionate.
So don't use AI to teach essay writing if the goal is for students to learn how to structure arguments themselves.
Exactly. Institutions also need to review the long-term impacts on critical thinking, creativity, and other core skills.
And finally, us, individual users, teachers, students, researchers, we have responsibilities too.
Absolutely. Be aware of the terms of use. Use the technology ethically and transparently, cite it properly. Don't pretend AI work is your own. And importantly, monitor for problems. If you see an AI application being used unlawfully or unethically, report it. You, the learner, have a role in accountability. Hashtag 5EC. Towards a policy framework for education and research. Section 4.
All right, so we've got the regulatory foundation. Section 4 moves us towards building actual policy for education and research. How do we integrate Gen AI responsibly within schools and universities? Hashtag like core policy pillars 4.1 and 4.2.
The policy framework builds directly on that human-centered approach. The first core pillar is promote inclusion and equity and diversity.
Which means more than just access, right?
Much more. Yes, ensure access regardless of socioeconomic status, disability, location. But crucially, policy must require AI providers to train models using data in multiple languages, especially local and indigenous languages.
Directly tackling that cultural colonization risk again.
Precisely. If models only speak dominant languages, they accelerate the decline of linguistic diversity. Policy has to actively fight that linguistic bias, ensuring the technology serves everyone, not just the linguistically powerful.
Okay, pillar one, inclusion. What's pillar two?
Protect human agency. This is fundamental. We need policies that prevent us from becoming overly reliant on AI in ways that actually damage our own intellectual skills.
Unintended dependency, like letting the AI do all the thinking.
Exactly. So actionable policy measures are needed. Inform learners how their data is used. Reinforce human autonomy in learning and research choices. And critically, prevent Gen AI use when it would rob learners of essential cognitive work.
Like what?
Things like real-world observation, hands-on empirical practice, deep discussion and debate with other humans. You can't outsource foundational learning experiences to a machine. Policy must also address potential addiction or dependency.
And protecting agency also means encouraging pushback,
Rare.
critiquing the AI.
Yes. Policy should foster a culture where learners, teachers, researchers are actively encouraged to question the AI's methods, its accuracy, its underlying assumptions. The human must always be the final judge of quality, truth, and relevance, not the machine. Hashtag B, capacity, pluralism, and evidence. 4.4, 4.5, 4.6, 4.7.
Okay, so inclusion and agency are the pillars. What else does the policy framework need? It talks about capacity building.
Urgently. Developing AI competencies, AI literacy for everyone, students, teachers, citizens. The source notes how few countries, maybe only 15 by early 2022, actually had government-backed AI curricula in schools.
That seems dangerously low given how fast this is moving.
It is. We need curricula that cover the ethics, how algorithms work, data issues, but also how to use Gen AI creatively and responsibly. And importantly, curricula should include discussions about how AI is changing the job market, preparing students for the future workforce.
And what about teachers? Their capacity seems even further behind.
Even more critical and lagging further. The guidance mentioned only about 7 countries reported specific training programs for teachers on Gen AI by that time.
7? That's shocking.
It highlights a massive gap. We urgently need to define the skills teachers need to use these tools effectively and ethically. And we need to analyze their unique, irreplaceable roles facilitating higher-order thinking, organizing human interaction, fostering empathy, and values things AI can't do.
Okay, capacity building is key. What about promoting different viewpoints? Pluralism.
Yes, promote plural opinions. Policy must acknowledge Gen AI's tendency to give standard dominant answers.
The stochastic parrot effect again.
Right. So users need to be trained to see the AI output critically as one perspective, often the most common one, but definitely not the only one, and frequently unreliable. Policy should actively create space for learning through trial and error, through hands-on experiments, through debate, not just accepting the first answer from the AI.
And finally, the need for local relevance and evidence.
Crucial. Testing locally relevant models. Since the big models come from the global north, we need deliberate efforts, maybe using synthetic data, to create or adapt tools that are sensitive to local contexts, languages, and cultures. And policy must insist that adopting any AI tool in education is based on solid evidence from pedagogical research showing it actually works and helps learning.
Not just because it's new and shiny.
Exactly. Decisions can't be driven by novelty, myth, or hype, as the guidance puts it. We need proof it's beneficial before widespread adoption. #TagGV. Facilitating creative use in education. Section 5. Okay, so we've talked regulation, we've talked policy frameworks. Section 5 gets really practical. How do schools and universities actually move beyond just banning or restricting Gen AI and start facilitating creative, positive uses? #A. Institutional Strategy and Design 5.1 and 5.2.
The first big hurdle seems to be assessment and plagiarism, right? If AI can write essays.
That's the immediate fire drill for many institutions, the short-term strategy. Well, AI detection tools are shaky, their effectiveness is really unproven against newer models. So the guidance suggests rigorous human detection methods are still key, alongside clear academic integrity policies.
But long term, that's not sustainable.
No, the long-term strategy has to be much deeper, rethinking assessment itself. If AI can ace the old essay format, maybe that format isn't assessing what truly matters anymore.
So shift focus.
Shift focus, away from tasks AI can automate, towards uniquely human skills, applying critical thinking, creativity, empathy, ethical judgment to solve complex, real-world problems, things AI can't replicate.
And any use of Gen AI in the classroom needs to be carefully managed.
Absolutely. The guidance calls for a human-centered and pedagogically appropriate interaction. This means any use must be controlled by the human, teacher or student, driven by genuine learning goals, not just efficiency.
And proportionate. What does that mean again?
It means the use has to be right for the learner's age. the intended learning outcome, and the type of knowledge involved, factual, conceptual, etc. Crucially, it must ensure human interaction and higher-order thinking remains central. It shouldn't bypass the learning process. #B co-design use cases 5.3.
Okay, let's get concrete. The guidance gives tables with specific use cases, skills needed, and risks. Let's walk through a few. First, Gen AI for research, Table 3.
So a potential use case is having AI act as an advisor, suggesting research questions, methodologies, helping structure an outline.
Sounds useful, especially for getting started.
It can be, but the risk. It might undermine how junior researchers learn that crucial process of struggling, making mistakes, finding their own way, trial and error.
And the required skill for the user is critical here.
Absolutely essential. The researcher must be able to verify everything the AI suggests, and specifically they need to watch out for AI citing non-existent research papers.
Hallucinating citations. That's terrible for research integrity.
Catastrophic. And the AI won't know it's fake. The human researcher bears 100% of the responsibility for checking every single source.
Okay, next, Gen AI for teaching, Table 4. Like helping teachers design courses.
Yeah, generating lesson plans, assessment ideas, rubrics could potentially save teachers a lot of prep time.
But the risks.
High risk here of imposing those dominant, maybe culturally inappropriate norms and teaching methods we talked about. If the AI only knows mainstream pedagogy, it might stifle innovation or local relevance.
And it could reduce human interaction.
That's a big concern. Limiting learners' access to direct guidance from a human teacher, potentially weakening that vital teacher-student relationship and mentorship role. The teacher has to stay firmly in control, specifying the pedagogical approach, verifying all factual content.
What about Gen AI as a 1.1 coach for foundational skills? Table 5, like language learning.
This is a popular area, AI for conversational practice, grammar checks, coding help. It offers personalized, self-paced learning.
Sounds great. Downsides.
Well, the AI might use culturally insensitive language or give contextually wrong corrections. And there's a risk of promoting formulaic writing or coding technically correct but lacking originality or style. It might also reduce motivation for real-life human conversation practice.
Interesting. Now, this one sounds exciting. Gen AI to facilitate higher-order thinking, Table 6, acting as a Socratic challenger.
This is where the AI engages you in a dialogue about complex, fuzzy problems to help you think deeper. You could prompt it, challenge my assumptions about X.
That could be really powerful for critical thinking.
Potentially. But the risk, especially with current Gen AI, is the echo chamber effect. It might still default to standard answers or perspectives, confirming your biases rather than genuinely challenging them or exposing you to truly diverse viewpoints. It might hinder genuinely independent thought.
Right. It might just agree politely.
Or offer predictable counterarguments.
Lastly, Gen AI for special needs, Table 7.
Yeah.
Huge potential here, surely.
Tremendous potential. AI-powered accessibility tools, automatic captioning, audio descriptions for visually impaired students, personalized learning paths.
But the guidance notes a big gap in actual use.
A huge gap. It mentions only 4 countries. China, Jordan, Malaysia, Qatar had formally validated or recommended AI tools for disability access at the time of the report. So potential isn't translating into practice fast enough.
And there are risks, too, like AI diagnosing learning difficulties.
Very high risk there. While AI might assist in conversational diagnosis, any findings must be interpreted by skilled human professionals. The chance of misdiagnosis by the AI alone is simply too high and potentially harmful. #Zax. Gen AI and the Future of Education and Research, Section 6.
Okay, we're nearing the end of our walkthrough. Section 6 really zooms out. It asks us to consider the deep, systemic, long-term shifts Gen AI might bring to the very foundations of education, knowledge, and research. This is bigger than just classroom tools. #A. Systemic risks and knowledge creation, 6.1, 6.2, 6.3.
Exactly. We need to look beyond the immediate issues to uncharted ethical territory. What are the long-term effects of reduced human connection if we interact more with AI? What's the real impact on intellectual development, on our cognitive skills if we offload thinking? What are the hidden psychological impacts, especially on kids?
And hidden discrimination from new models we don't even understand yet.
Right. These are deep, systemic questions we need ongoing research and public debate about.
And the copyright chaos we touched on earlier It gets worse at a systemic level, doesn't it?
It becomes almost unmanageable. The guidance talks about the lack of traceability. If an AI generates music or art or text based on millions of sources, how can you possibly determine ownership or originality in a legal sense?
It mentions that AI-generated song mimicking Drake in The Weeknd.
Yeah, perfect example. It went viral, then got pulled down immediately because of the copyright nightmare it
All
represented.
right.
Now scale that up to potentially millions of AI-generated research papers, reports, creative works. The legal system is overwhelmed.
And this fundamentally challenges where we get our knowledge from.
That's a huge point in 6.3. What happens if conversations with AI become a primary way people learn or get information? Does that undermine engagement with traditional human-validated sources, textbooks, peer-reviewed research, empirical work, expert teachers?
And the document asks a really provocative question. Should interacting with unvalidated AI output even count as learning?
It's a profound question. If the source isn't verified, if it might be hallucinating or biased, is absorbing that information actually building reliable knowledge? Or could it be counterproductive, embedding misconceptions? We risk losing touch with reliable knowledge sources. Hashtag B. The future of thinking and assessment. 6.4, 6.5, 6.6.
This leads to a core tension: homogenization versus creativity.
Yeah, we've seen Gen AI tends to reinforce dominant ideas. If everyone starts using AI assistants for thinking and writing, does that lead to a convergence of thought, a loss of pluralism, originality, and dissenting voices?
Increased dependency could really threaten independent thought, self-directed discovery, the
Yeah.
very things education aims to foster.
Which forces us, yet again, to rethink assessment. If AI can pass exams designed to test knowledge recall or standard writing,
Then those exams aren't measuring the right things anymore.
exactly, the focus has to shift. The guidance suggests assessing things AI can't easily replicate. 1. Values. Can students apply ethical principles, design human-centered solutions? 2. Foundational knowledge, but updated. Not just what is true, but why it's true, how we know it, understanding the process of knowledge creation. 3. Higher order thinking. Critical evaluation, creative synthesis, complex problem solving, effective human AI collaboration. 4. Vocational skills, how to actually work with AI systems effectively and ethically in future jobs.
So it all boils down to this fundamental question about thinking processes. Can we, should we, outsource basic thinking and skill development to machines?
That's the heart of it. The act of writing, for instance, has always been deeply tied to the act of thinking, structuring your thoughts, finding the right words.
But now you can get an AI to generate the structure, the outline, even a first draft. The guidance calls this writing without thinking.
Potentially, yes. If we just use AI to generate text, the focus of learning might shift away from that initial struggle of creation towards skills like prompt engineering, critically evaluating the AI's output, and co-writing or editing.
Which are valuable skills.
Valuable, yes, but are they a substitute for the cognitive exercise of building an argument or developing an idea from scratch? That's the crucial debate. What cognitive muscles might atrophy if we rely too heavily on AI for the initial thinking part?
That really captures the core tension, doesn't it? Augmentation versus usurpation. Throughout this deep dive, we've seen the incredible speed of Gen AI, the alarming regulatory lag, the serious controversies around equity, opacity, bias, and the absolute need for policies that are human-centered and pedagogically sound.
And connecting it all, the guidance isn't just about putting up guardrails to prevent harm. It's really about proactively defining and defending what we value in human intelligence, human creativity, and human connection in an age of increasingly sophisticated machines. As the conclusion states, these tools must augment us, support our abilities, not undermine or replace them. They have to be trustworthy partners.
So wrapping up, what does this mean for you, the learner, navigating this new landscape? We want to leave you with a final provocative thought drawing directly from that last point. If we find ourselves teaching the next generation primarily how to critically edit AI-generated text, rather than teaching them the foundational skill of how to structure an original argument from scratch, what fundamental human intellectual capability might we be sacrificing on the altar of efficiency? Something to really think about next time you're staring at a blinking cursor or an AI prompt box.